All right, everybody, we're going to get started. So if anyone joins in a few minutes late, they'll just kind of catch up. I'm recording today's webinar, so that way, if any of you cannot stay for the whole webinar or just want to rewatch at a later date, I will send the recording to everybody. And if you have any questions or just kind of a comment or story to add throughout the webinar, feel free to just unmute yourself or go ahead and type in the chat, and I'll try and pay attention to the chat as I go about talking about our waterfowl and seal friends. So to start us off, our webinar today is about winter waterfowl and seals. And I will be presenting. My name is Nicole Haines. I'm the Education Director for the American Littoral Society. And typically this would be a walk that we have from roughly January until March each year. And I will lead it along with a coworker of mine whose name was Jeff Dement. So unfortunately, he passed away not too long ago. So this is in memory of him. He was our fish tagging program director and our senior naturalist. So he was very, very knowledgeable. I owe a lot to what I know because of him, and just want to make this in honor of him. All right. So if you are not a member of the American Littoral Society, I urge you to go ahead and become one. We are an organization based off of our members. So when you guys become a member, that money goes to donating to multiple of our different programs. And it also helps us when we fight for issues that are important to us. So we can say, hey, we have 2,000 members that are a part of our organization that are backing up this issue that we're fighting for, which may be something like clean water. But we were founded back in 1961 by a group of divers. There's a whole longer story on our website. I won't go into the details. We have three main facets for the most part, which are education, advocacy, and conservation or restoration. So as far as education, I handle the education out of our headquarters, which is at Sandy Hook, New Jersey. If you guys take a look at the photo on the right, that's myself and my dog Luna sitting on the steps of our building. So we're located in Officers Row in Building 18 at Sandy Hook up in the Highlands of New Jersey. We also have an office down in Millville, which is in South Jersey, and then an office in Jamaica Bay, Queens. So I educate people from as young as they can understand me pretty much, all the way up to adults. And we talk about really anything related to the environment, especially coastal things. So marine science, dunes, beach grass, fish, anything along those lines. And then we have advocacy work that we do that's mostly led by my director, Tim Dillingham. So he will fight for different issues, like I said before, maybe clean water or maybe access to public beaches. So if you're like me, you love going to the beach really all year round, but especially in the summer. And there's a lot of beaches along our coast that have been privatized due to surf clubs or just people building really large houses along the coast. So when that happens, that section of the beach is now privatized and it's not accessible to the public. So we fight for issues like keeping plenty of areas open to the public and accessible, which I'm very grateful for. And then as far as conservation, we do a lot of restoration work. So if we have a big nor'easter or a superstorm or something that rolls in, or just kind of things in general, we will go ahead and restore different areas of New Jersey. And big projects that we work on are creating different reefs in estuary areas and marshes, because they are really important to us for kind of filtering water and for just kind of protecting the land behind it. So we have a lot of different reefs that we've worked on and are currently working on, where we use, whether it may be recycled oyster shell or just recycled shell in general, to build reefs, and we typically use volunteers. And then we've also restored beaches down in South Jersey, where a lot of horseshoe crabs will come up in the months of May and June, and they will come up and mate and lay their eggs. So they need beach area to do that. So when we restored some of these beaches, we've noticed a huge comeback of horseshoe crabs, and we go ahead and tag them so we can kind of figure out how many there are and even where they're popping up around the world. So when we are able to have lots of volunteers assist with us, that's a really fun activity to be a part of, either restoring the beaches or just tagging horseshoe crabs. So they kind of cover the beach. It's almost like you can't even walk. It's really a great sight to see. So that's just a few of the things that we do. We do plenty more. And then our mission statement is just at the bottom of the page, which is the American Littoral Society promotes the study and conservation of marine life and habitat, protects the coast from harm, and we empower others to do the same. So today, through educating you guys about winter waterfowl and our seal friends, we hope that you'll want to protect them, but also enjoy viewing them outside in nature. So here's just a few pictures of past seal walks that we've been on, and then a picture in the corner of Jeff and I when we would go and gather beach grass for a beach grass and dunes program that I do for students. So if we take a look on the left, this is a group of people that we had for a winter waterfowl and seal walk, I believe back in 2019. So we get real bundled up and we walk all around Sandy Hook, and we take a look at the different waterfowl and seals that we may be lucky enough to spot. And then on the bottom here, you can see what looks like a bunch of kids, which it is. This was a really large homeschool group that asked us to do a private walk for them. So that's always an option outside of COVID times. And then up top, we see a bunch of the seals laying out on one of our little sandbar areas where they like to haul out, so you call it. And then Jeff many of the times would carry our large scope. I like to call it our mega scope, so that we can take a closer look at our seal friends, because these were pictures that were taken were very zoomed in. So like I said, typically we have this walk in person, and I wanted to let you guys know where exactly we go about. So that way, if you wanted to go out on your own to take a look at the winter waterfowl and seals with, say, friends and family, you can do that on your own. So the map on our left here is just kind of a zoomed in version of Fort Hancock, which is the tip of Sandy Hook. And typically what we do is we meet at building 18. So if you can see my mouse, building 18 is right down here, kind of next to this P. So our parking lot is there. We'll meet here. And then in order to go and see our seal friends, whether or not they're going to be out, we don't have a button. We can't just call them, unfortunately. So we'll typically walk down along the bay up to kind of closer to the Coast Guard area. And there's a chapel down there. So sometimes they will lay out on a little jetty down here. So if we're lucky enough, we'll see them laying out there. Then as far as other spots, if you guys take a look at move this, for the zoomed out map. So Fort Hancock is right up here at the end, but we will also typically park at Sea Lot, which is somewhere down here. They're not really labeled. If you look on Google Maps and you zoom in, you can see. So we'll park at Sea Lot, and then we'll walk over to the bay side. You're typically going to want to walk over to the bay side. Sea Lot is going to be a longer walk. So you're going to walk down to the edge. I believe it's here. And you'll walk to the end of this kind of sandbar. And then this area here is where the seals have been known to lay out on what we call Skeleton Hill Island. But if you're not great at walking on sand, or I guess in total would be maybe a mile, maybe a little bit less of a walk, it can be a little difficult to walk on soft sand. So that's a spot. Also, if you go and park at D Lot, which is roughly here, and then walk across, there is a large boardwalk that juts out into the bay, and we'll walk to the end of that and then kind of get a further away look at this island here where they'll haul out. And that doesn't require walking on sand at all. And then occasionally we will spot them just in the open ocean, but that's a little harder to spot. Then as far as waterfowl, what we'll do for spotting them is also, we will park in, we'll park in B-Lot. So B-Lot walks over to the bay where we have Plum Island, where it's kind of like a marsh estuary area. So a lot of the waterfowl like to hang out in that region because a lot of them prefer more protected areas and marshy areas. So Plum Island, that's one. As we head down, we might want to park at it's not really a lot, so we kind of call it F lot sometimes, but it's Fishing Beach, which will drive down a road to our right as long as we are entering in to the park. And we'll park down at the end. There is a path where you can walk throughout all of the foliage, and sometimes we'll spot different waterfowl in there. And then in the open ocean, there's plenty of different waterfowl that will hang out there. Then as we head down to Fort Hancock, they will hang out kind of down by the Coast Guard, same area where I talked about the seals. So over here. If we go all the way into Sandy Hook, there is M-Lot, I believe roughly at the edge. M-Lot will have you walk out, you're gonna have to walk on sand to an area where you can see this little blue sliver. There is a pond out there, so that's North Pond. And we'll get some waterfowl that hang out in that area. And just to the tip of Sandy Hook in general, we'll get a good amount of waterfowl down there. I believe that's most of our spots. So if you go out on your own and you spot any of our different seals or waterfowl friends, definitely let me know. I've been working from home as most people have, so I haven't had the pleasure of being out there every day and looking for them. And then what I always like to touch on before we go on our walks or talk in our webinars is safety when we're seeing our different animal friends. So when we go and take a look at seals, whether we are on land or we're in the water, say in a boat or a kayak, we definitely want to keep our distance. So if we are getting too close to these creatures, it's against the law for the most part. So if we take a look at this NOAA seal viewing guidelines kind of picture on our right, it says to stay at least 150 feet away. Definitely stay away from seal pups because you don't want to get an aggressive mom kind of protecting their pup. Seals do bite, so you definitely don't want to get bitten by a seal. We want to make sure that we're being quiet. So especially when we take walks with people and a lot of kids, we are always point out to just keep our voices down. And then as we get further away, sure, go ahead, talk all you want. We don't want to feed the seals or the birds. And like I said, if we're kayaking, paddleboarding in a boat, you just don't want to get too close. If they're coming towards you, you can't do anything about it. You can move away, but if they keep following you, it's not your fault. And then we have a number down at the bottom, which we can call if you spot what looks like an injured or sick seal. So this is the Marine Mammal Stranding Center. They're located down in Brigantine, and they will rehabilitate them and then release them. So this picture you see on the left here, it looks like the seal's kind of coming out of a cage, which it was. They rehabilitated that seal and then released it at Sandy Hook, which if you're lucky enough to see a release, it's pretty cool because you can be kind of within a closer distance than you normally would when they're laying out on the island. But they kind of urge them to head towards the water, and you'll hear them kind of get real mad and start biting at like a broom or something. So you can see that they're not all cute. They're not always the water dogs. And then as far as birds go, I found a few different numbers if we spot injured birds and ducks. So if you guys want to take either a picture of this slide or just jot it down, that's always a good idea if you're somebody who's out and about a lot looking at the different birds and seals. So we're going to start off with seals, the dogs of the sea. What Jeff always liked to call them is charismatic megafauna. So it's just kind of like a fancy way of saying that they are appealing and they're a larger creature, which yes, they are. A lot of the times when we would have these walks, people were just strictly there for the seals. But we call them pinnipeds. So they are of any order or suborder, Pinnipedia, of aquatic carnivorous mammals, so such as seals or walruses, with all 4 limbs modified into flippers. So our seals, they do not have ears, they just have kind of like holes, whereas seal lions, you'll see more so on the West Coast, they have little ears. Let's go. So I want to see a few different photos here. So our seal friends come to New Jersey from their breeding grounds of northern New England and Canada region. So if we take a look, they kind of come in all different shades and colors. Here's our one friend being released again. So what they like to do is, what we see in this photo is they're hauling out. So they will rest in certain areas. A lot of the times what they're doing is they're warming up because they cannot maintain their body temperature for long periods of time if they're staying in cold water all of the time. This is because they are smaller and in size, and they don't have as much blubber as, say, like a whale or a dolphin or something like that. And also they may haul out just to digest their food. So if you've ever seen a seal eat in a video or maybe at a different aquarium or something like that, they don't really, sit there and chew for 20 minutes and really conscious about it. They just go ahead and swallow it. So they're going to have to lay out and digest their food. So if we get too close to these creatures, we could mess up their digestion process or just them warming up, which is really important for them staying alive. And they may rest for up to 8 hours a day in the fall and winter. And then they typically have, the seals that we see are harbor seals, and they'll have kind of like a V-shaped nostril. I think occasionally we've been known to see gray seals, which have more of like a horse-like head. But for the most part, harbor seals, and the males can get from around 150 to 300 pounds and 6 feet in length. Females are roughly 200 pounds and about 4.5 feet in length. Typically what they eat are fish and squid. They can live to around 25 years. Predators that they have are orcas, sharks, polar bears when they're not in our region, more so up north. And like I said, our guys here don't have ears. They just kind of have little holes. So we take a look at this little video that my coworker Don Reapy took up in Jamaica Bay. Kind of looks like he's waving, he or she.
There's another one popping its head up behind the harbor seal. There's a third one. Yeah. Oh, there you go.
So there we have 2 seals laying out, and then let's see, let's go to my next one. New. There we go. Now we have a few more. There we go. So hopefully some of you will get to go out on your own and see some seals in person. If you do, I recommend bringing binoculars if you own any, or picking up a pair, or even just a camera with a longer lens than, say, a standard kit lens that comes with it. If not, sometimes they can even be close enough to just spot with your eye, but it's always nice to be able to zoom in a little bit. So next up, we're going to move to our different kinds of winter waterfowl. So we have right here our snowy owl. This has been on my list to spot for quite some time now. I haven't yet seen any. So the one we see pictured here is a female snowy owl, and we can tell because they typically have more darker markings on their feathers, whereas the males will be mostly all white. And their breeding season is roughly May, where they will be up in the Arctic Circle. So owls, they cannot move their eyes. They have to turn their entire head to kind of look around to see what's happening. So if you ever see an owl and it looks like it just kind of took its head off, popped it back on backwards, because they're able to rotate, I think, roughly 270 degrees. They have yellow eyes, and they have protruding eyelids that help protect them from the sun. So kind of like a little visor that almost comes over their eyes so they can lay out in the sun but not be blinded all day. What they eat are small rodents. In summer, in their breeding grounds, they like to hunt in the daylight because the daylight is very long up there. But then down here, when they come for the winter, they'll typically hunt at night. That's just what they prefer. So if we take a look at our next photo, their feet are actually covered in feathers also. So they're just fully engulfed in feathers and staying very warm, which they absolutely need since they live all year round in just cold temperatures. They can live for roughly 10 years in the wild and have been known to live up to 28 years in captivity. And they are the heaviest owl due to all of their warm feathers. So I think it's been said they weigh between 4 to 6 pounds, which is pretty heavy for an owl because typically they're pretty small. And their wingspan can get up to about 6 feet in length. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat. So here we have a common loon, but also the name of my dog. This loon that we're looking at is seen in winter. I think this was taken up in Jamaica Bay, so it's actually laying on ice. I believe my coworker told me that it was actually stuck on the ice. It kind of got, when you touch ice and your finger kind of gets stuck to it, or your tongue if you feel like licking a pole. So they had to rescue that bird. But loons are typically low swimming birds. They have, as you can see, a dagger-like beak or bill, blood red eyes, and they have kind of a haunting call. So I've heard them a bunch when I've been up in the Adirondacks, kind of hear them at night. I don't have any sound clips, but if you look it up, it's kind of a cool sound to hear because not all these winter waterfowl have a great sound to listen to. Their breeding plumage is black and white with a checkered back, which we'll see in the next photo. And they have an iridescent black head and neck with a white necklace kind of marking. Let's see, I'll go to the next photo. There we go. Kind of like a necklace marking their neck area. So this is their breeding plumage. And then almost like a little chin strap right underneath of their head. And then males and females typically have the same plumage. They are carnivores, so they will dive for fish, crayfish, shrimp, leeches. Since they dive to catch their prey, they typically eat it before they surface. And a lot of our winter waterfowl that we're going to talk about, when they need to take flight from the water, they take off kind of like an airplane. So they need a runway to take off. And if you were to see a video of one of these ducks taking off in slow motion, you kind of see them running on the water. So it's a cool sight to see. They are migratory, so they live in one place and then fly to another to breed. They stay close to large bodies of water no matter where they are. And fun fact, they walk clumsily on land, so that's how they got their name, Loon. Their legs are placed very far back on their body, which makes them really good swimmers, but not really good walkers. So it's typically why we'll see them in the water. Then we have our red-throated loon. So we see the picture in the top right and also bottom right. You can kind of see that chestnut looking color on the loon. So they also have a sharp, thin bill, but their bill is almost upturned a little bit. I feel like you can more so see it in the top right photo up here. Also have a red eye, not as much as that checkered back, but a little bit of striation and colors. And then they need clear water to visually fish so they can kind of see what they're looking at. Unlike the common loon, they can explode off of the water and just take off in that way. They don't need a runway. If you guys see in the bottom right photo, there's actually a little baby right under its wing, kind of hiding. And their habitat, so breeding season, they are in freshwater ponds, lakes, and wetlands. And then winter, they live along sheltered coastlines in saltwater. So here we have our classic mallard. Many people have kind of like figurines of them in their houses. I guess the mallard is a fan favorite. So the male and female look very different, as you can see from this picture. They both have that dark, or they both have a dark blue band bordered by white on their wing. So you can see it in the female right here. There is a dark bluish purple band with white. And the male also has it easier to see when they spread their wings. So they do not dive for their food. They dabble or kind of tip when you see the little duck butts going down or up in the air. They like to eat seeds or aquatic vegetation. In the breeding season, they will eat things like larvae, worms, snails, freshwater shrimp. And for migration, they will typically eat just agricultural grain and seed. Then they are, it's been said that migrating mallards have been clocked at roughly 55 miles per hour, pretty fast. And for habitat, they prefer wetland habitats, lakes, and ponds. And the fun fact about them is that the oldest recorded mallard was 27 years old. So almost as old as me. And here we just have a picture of where the mallards go as far as breeding. So it's a more bluish color. Breeding is going to be up in Canada, a little bit of Arctic regions, and Alaska. And then they spend year-round, mostly in the United States, avoiding some of the southern states. And then as far as wintering, they will go down to our southern states and even dip into Mexico a little bit. And they've just kind of been adopted by humans. You see them feeding bread a lot and have kind of been like a fan favorite. So here we have our black duck. So they're not actually black, but from far away they look black. From closer detail, you can see that they're a very dark brown color, and they have a lighter head, and then with a yellow-green bill. So that speculum part of their wing, or the back part of the wing, they also have a purplish blue iridescent color, but they don't have that white stripe that the mallard has. And then there's a phrase that says, to know if it's a black, how do you tell if it's a black duck? There's always a silver lining under the wing. So we can see this duck flying, and there's kind of a nice silver lining underneath. So as far as food goes, they mostly eat plant matter. They sometimes eat insects during the breeding season. They dive to avoid predators and sometimes to find food. So they are actually slow, heavy flyers, but they are really good swimmers. They breed in a variety of wetland areas, and they winter in saltwater along the coast, in freshwater inland areas. And fun fact for our black ducks is they return to the same marshes each fall and may starve rather than migrate further south if the marshes are frozen. So that's unfortunate. Here we have our bufflehead. Wow, these guys are one of my favorite, at least to look at. So characteristics of our bufflehead, as we can see from the photo, they have almost what looks like a slice of white pizza, as you can see on their head, with a very iridescent front of their face and also neck with a nice zoomed in lens. You can see it almost has like a purpley green iridescence. From further away, you're not really going to be able to see that as much. They are the smallest diving sea duck in North America. So the female actually has, if we can see the female in the bottom right, a small white patch kind of on its cheek, but they have the brown color. And as far as why we see a lot of the females are mostly brown, or at least have less of the vibrant colors, and the males have those vibrant colors, that's specifically for mating, so that the males can attract a mate. And then we have, as far as food, they dive for aquatic insects, crustaceans, and mollusks as well. They can stay submerged for about 13 seconds and they eat their prey underwater. For flight, they can take off straight off from the water, which is different than most diving ducks, which most of them need that running start like an airplane. They, when they're flying, can be identified by the black and white stripes you kind of see on that here, which from far away can be really hard to identify a lot of these different waterfowl. So that's why we have to look for the different markings on them, whether they're in flight or they're in the water, maybe how they take off, how they feed, and also kind of how they look when they're in the sky. Are they flapping incessantly? Are they more so gliding? All of these factors will help you identify them from each other if, say, they're far away and you can't tell. So the Bufflehead, they like to winter in different bays and estuaries and reservoirs. They are actually known to nest in the holes excavated by northern flickers and sometimes pileated woodpeckers. And the fun fact about them is that their name is taken from buffalo head. So it was kind of shortened Bufflehead because of their large heads. So here we have the Ruddy Duck. Our Ruddy Duck has kind of a scoop-shaped bill with a bluish tint to it. So the blue is on a breeding male, and then they're going to have a chestnut body. The long tail is most of the time held upright, so that'll kind of help you identify the Ruddy Duck. For food, they will dive to feed on aquatic invertebrates, especially midge larvae, and they mostly feed at night. And when they dive, they will kind of grab mud and strain the mud out and then eat the creatures that they find within it. For flight, they need a running start because they have smaller wings. Their habitat, they like to nest in marshes near lakes and ponds. They winter. In winter, they inhabit shallow estuary areas protected by saltwater bays and typically by other diving ducks. Fun fact about them is that they lay the largest eggs of any duck in the world. Whoa. Then we have our northern pintail. So this one also has a tail that kind of sticks up like our Ruddy Duck, but this one's a little thinner and longer, and also the markings on the pintail are different. So if we take a look, they have a dark brown head, also still kind of a bluish beak, but not as scoop-shaped. And then they have this white vertical line that comes up the back of their neck. So those are some good identifying features of the northern pintail. In the fall and winter, they will eat seeds and grain. Spring and summer, they eat roots and different invertebrates. And they will dabble in the water, which it means just they kind of tip with their butt up in the air. They explode off of the water. They don't need a runway. And in winter, they like shallow wetlands and exposed mud flats and lakes. And a fun fact about them is that they're an elegant duck with their trim form and their swift flight. They have been dubbed the greyhound of the air. So if we know like greyhound dogs, they are very slim, fast dogs. Then we have our ring-necked ducks. So they're called ring-necked ducks, but from far away, it's really hard to actually see the ring around their neck. It's much easier to see the ring around their bill. But closer up, you can see that there is a ring, and you can kind of spot it on the female a little bit better here. which she also has kind of a ring on her bill. So typically they kind of look similar to greater scops, which we'll see in a minute, but you cannot usually see the ring, like I said. Unlike the scops, these ducks have the ring around the bill. So to identify the females from a greater scop, you see this white ring around its eye that typically trails a little bit further back to the back of its head. The greater scops will not have that. So they both dive and dabble for their food, mostly seeds, roots, and tubers. They need to run to take off for their flight. So their habitat in winter, they like ponds and lakes and slow-moving rivers, sometimes coastal estuaries. And a fun fact about them is that they are a fast flyer. The ringneck duck undertakes longer migrations than most other diving ducks. So they can kind of head a little bit further since they are a faster duck. So here we see our greater scaup. So as you can tell from this photo, they like to hang out in very large groups, sometimes referred to as a raft or flock. So they have kind of a barred gray back, a black front and back, and white sides with a yellow eye. Typically the adults in their second year and up will have that yellow eye, and then they have a larger bill than the lesser scaup, which we'll see in our next photo. As far as food, they will eat mollusks and different plant material. They dive for food, but they will eat their food on the surface after they dive for it. For flight, they will form large flocks and rafts, like you can see in this photo, and kind of stick together. Habitat, they like to gather in coastal bays, lagoons, and estuaries in large groups. And their fun fact is that their name most likely comes from their display call of scop scop. I'm not going to try and imitate them. Then if we see in the photo here, on the right side, we will see the greater scaup, which is definitely bigger. And the markings are a little different, but pretty similar. So they do have an iridescence to them. And then the lesser scaup is on the left, where their head has more of a point to it, and they're smaller, and they have kind of a patterned look to their wing. So the lesser scaup, they will dive for their food, larvae, crustaceans, mollusks, anything along those lines. Sometimes seeds, they need to run on the water to take off. In winter, you will see them in dense flocks of hundreds or even thousands, as we've seen, on lakes, reservoirs, rivers, sheltered bays. And a fun fact about them is they will form a new pair bond every year. A lot of different ducks will kind of keep that same pair bond, but they will form a new one. So then we have our long-tailed duck. So if we take a look, it has a long tail. Some people decided to name animals smartly off of what they look like. So we can see this very long tail, which differs a lot from our ruddy duck, which had kind of a shorter, stiffer tail. This is longer and kind of has almost a curve to it. And when in flight, you can see there's almost a V, a white V on them, so that'll help identify them. They like to eat typically at sea. So you can see in these photos, it looks kind of wavy. So they like to hang out in the actual open ocean. They'll eat mollusks and crustaceans. In the summer, they'll eat like aquatic insects. They will dive and swim underwater, sometimes opening their wings to kind of help them steer or get a little bit more power. They fly low with stiff, shallow wing beats, and they would typically tilt from side to side. So you can kind of see them tilting in this photo here. Like I said, habitat, they'll be found in the open ocean. And fun fact is they can dive more than 200 feet below the surface, which is pretty impressive to see a duck kind of dive that far down for food. So that's why kind of they'll use their wings to help give them some extra propulsion and even help them steer a bit. Then we're going to talk about 3 different types of scoters. So this is our surf scoter. To me, it kind of looks like a funky looking puffin. Not the most attractive of ducks, but fun looking. They kind of have a large swollen looking bill at its base, so it's a little bit thicker. and they have white eyes. Then they have this kind of longer triangular patch, white patch along the back of their neck and a shorter one on top of their head. And the females will also kind of have a swollen looking beak. They dive for their food, taking prey from the ocean floor, and they will even take mussels off of man-made structures. So they have kind of that strong bill. They are strong flyers, but they do need a running start. They prefer open coastal environments, shallow bays, and estuaries. And the fun fact is that their unique coloring led to their name Skunkhead Coot. So it's not a really great nickname, but apparently that's their nickname. Then we have our black Scoter, very different looking than our surf Scoter. So this duck is mostly all black with kind of a bulbous orange part to the base of its bill. They have a black eye, and they will dive for their food, and they will feed only in open water, avoiding dense submergement and emergent vegetation. They swallow their prey underwater and mostly eat mollusks. They are strong flyers, but also need a running start. In winter, they can be found on coastal bays and along coastlines, usually in shallow water closer to the shore. So these guys you'll look for them typically in the ocean, sometimes in our bay regions, Sandy Hook. And our fun fact is they are typically the most vocal of waterfowl. And then lastly, we have our white-winged Scoter as far as Scoters go. Also, in my opinion, not the most attractive of ducks, but definitely appealing to look at. Super funky. They have an interesting bulbous head with also kind of a thicker bill at its base, but then both yellow and orangey, a bill at the end with what looks like a white comma almost underneath of their eye, and then this white stripe back at the base of their wing. So they are actually the largest of the three types of Scoters, and in all plumages, they have that white patch on their wing, which helps distinguish them when they're in flight. They will dive for their prey down to the ocean floor and will swallow it underwater, usually mollusks and crustaceans. They are strong flyers, but also need a running start. They winter in open coastal environments, so they favor bays and inlets with sandy shores and shellfish beds, and they usually are in deeper water than the other two Scoters, so they'll be further out in the ocean. I didn't really have a fun fact on them. I just kind of wrote that they're not great looking. Then we have our Harlequin ducks. So they have a very cool look to them, in my opinion. So a lot of different markings, whether it be kind of stripes or dots on them, ranging from black to white to gray and chestnut. And the females kind of have very similar markings on them as well, just different coloring, mostly brown. They will eat aquatic inverts and fish. They are very good swimmers, and they will dive for their food and also use their wings for steering, just like that pintail duck. They can dive for as long as 45 seconds. And they breed mostly along whitewater rivers, and they winter on rocky, windswept coasts. So because of where they like to breed and live, which is rougher waters, the fun fact about them is that their lifestyle is very rough on their body, and many Harlequin ducks endure broken bones from a lifetime of being tossed around in rough water. And then if we look at the top right here, they get their name from the character, the Harlequin, at the top. I have a comment here. Oh, someone's got to leave. That's okay. If any of you joined in late, I had said at the beginning, this is being recorded, and I will send the recording to each of you. And then we have our hooded Merganser. We only have about, I think, 3 different waterfowl left in case some of you need to get back to work or anything along those lines. So our hooded Merganser, they have a crest kind of in the back of their head that can be spread or closed, depending on, I think, basically mating purposes, so they can kind of squish that down a little bit or puff it out. So they're going to have what looks like a large white patch. They have that yellow eye and different white stripes on the front of their body. Very thin bill. And they have a more diverse diet. So they'll eat small fish, crustaceans, aquatic insects. And what's neat is that they actually have underwater vision, which helps with diving. So that their fun fact is that they have a third eyelid, which is clear, that will allow them to see underwater. So it almost acts like goggles over their eye to protect them. In winter, they are found in woodland ponds and swamps, as well as coastal estuaries, bays, and inlets. So these guys you won't typically see out in the open ocean. Oh, and then here's a picture of it kind of closing the crest up here. So open, closed. Then we have a different type of merganser. We have our red-breasted merganser. So they have, in their name, kind of a reddish-brown breast to them. They have a red eye and kind of a white neck collar and what I like to call bedhead in the back there, looking real good. They dive mostly for fish. They move to shallow water to catch the fish. They'll kind of like almost herd the fish over. They need a running start for their flight. During migration and in the winter, the mergansers occur mostly on salt water in coastal bays, estuaries, and other protected coastal areas. And their fun fact is that they can reach speeds of up to 81 miles per hour. Whoa, that's fast. And then we have our brant geese. So brant geese typically will come down here in this region for winter, and then they'll head back up to Canada and Arctic regions. They like to nest in Greenland above the Arctic Circle. And what they used to eat was actually eelgrass, but unfortunately eelgrass has kind of died off and been more of an endangered type of species. So they converted to eating sea lettuce years ago, and then eventually converted to eating now lawns or golf course grass due to the decline of eelgrass. So they've kind of adapted. And from far away, these guys kind of may look like Canada geese, but they have, they're smaller heads in general. They have this white kind of stripe underneath of their head, and they're smaller in general than the Canada goose. So here's just kind of a grouping of them. And then I believe our last waterfowl for the day is going to be our Canada goose, everyone's favorite, obviously. We love walking across lawns covered in goose poop. So most of you are pretty familiar with the Canada goose. As we can see, they're bigger than the brant geese. They have the white stripe on their face rather than that white mark on their neck. A fun fact about them is that they, in the next picture we see here, due to an overwhelming amount of them on, I'm not sure which New York airport, there was a lot of them there. So the state allowed 1,000 of them to be herded and gathered to be sent upstate and slaughtered so that the planes were not hitting all of these geese or avoiding them. So here is a picture of them, unfortunately, being herded to head upstate for the place where they're going to pass away. But they are very plentiful, and as we can see, they kind of graze on open grassy areas, and we have kind of made food really abundant for them with the fact that we are quite obsessed with having just pristine lawns everywhere. So they have abundant amount of food. So that is the entirety of the webinar for today. So I thank you all for being a part of it. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you guys actually get out there on your own and have the ability and the option to take a walk. So bundle up, or maybe don't, because today it's pretty warm. Take a look and see where you can find our different waterfowl and seal. Make sure we keep our distance. And if you do see some or take some cool photos, feel free to send them to me or send them to us on social media, which is at Littoral Society on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Become a member, and see you later. So I thank all of you for participating. If anybody has any questions or anything that they would like to say, you can chat me or unmute yourself or just go about your day and have a wonderful day. Try and get outside because it is pretty warm out today. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Enjoy your day. Bye. Thank you.